The rain always falls before I kill. I used to think it was coincidence. 17 missions across 9 worlds, and I stopped believing in coincidence somewhere around mission 6. Now I just accept it. The rain comes, and then I do what I was trained to do, and then whatever needed to end is ended. That's the shape of my life. That's been the shape of my life for 11 years. My name is Kale Morrow. I was born in the city of Portland, Oregon, on a planet called Earth, which most species in the Concord Assembly refer to as the Threshold World, humanity's point of entry into a galaxy that had been running without us for 100,000 years. I was 19 years old when the Veil Dominion attacked the Threshold Station and killed 40,000 people in 6 minutes, and 20 years old when I signed the enlistment papers for the Concord Special Operations Division, and I have not been back to Earth since. That was 11 years ago. Tonight I am standing on the rain-soaked deck of a floating settlement somewhere in the outer systems, watching fire spread across the upper platforms, and thinking that after this mission I am supposed to be free. That's what Division Commander Harith told me when he handed me the briefing file. Complete this assignment, Morrow. Then you're done. Honorable discharge, full pension, passage home to whatever Earth looks like now. He said it the way people say things they mean but hope you won't hold them to. The mission file was 3 pages long. Find the Kithra Queen. Retrieve the core she carries. Return to extraction point Delta. Do not engage unnecessarily. Do not leave witnesses. 3 pages. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. The settlement is a floating city, or it was, before whatever hit it an hour ago. It's built on a series of massive platforms linked by rope bridges and metal walkways, drifting above a shallow inland sea on a world that has no name in Concord records, only a designation, Waya 7. The Kithra have been living here for generations, the briefing said. Peaceful. Isolated. No military presence. No weapons manifest. The briefing also said they were alone here. The briefing was wrong. I came in through the eastern approach, dropped from a low-atmosphere insertion pod into the rain, and found the settlement already burning. The upper platforms are gone, collapsed into the water below in twisted wreckage that still hisses where hot metal meets the sea. The lower levels are chaos. Bodies on the walkways. Fire in the market district. Something moving through the smoke that isn't human and isn't Kithra. Bipedal but wrong in the proportions, like something designed for a different gravity. Fast in the way that things are fast when speed is their primary weapon. They move through the settlement in coordinated silence, tearing through the remaining guards with the precise efficiency of a force that came here knowing exactly what it wanted. They didn't come for slaughter. Or rather, slaughter is incidental. They came for the same thing I did. The core. I've read what little the Concord knows about Kithra cores. Ancient technology, or biology, the xenobiologists can't agree on the distinction. A crystallized concentration of whatever the Kithra are at their most fundamental level. Not just power, though it is power. Not just memory, though it holds memory. Something that sits at the intersection of both and extends into territory that human science doesn't have adequate language for yet. The Dominion wants it as a weapon. The Concord wants it as a countermeasure. Both of them sent people to take it from a floating city on a nameless world where the Kithra have been living in isolation for 300 years, and neither of them asked the Kithra what they thought about that. I grip my blades, 2 short carbon steel weapons with molecular edges, standard CSO'd issue, the only things I've carried long enough to name, and move forward through the burning settlement. There is a door at the center of the settlement's lowest platform. Protected. Or it was protected. There were 6 guards here, wounded, holding the line against whatever had been coming for them. Protecting something behind that door with the specific, deliberate courage of people who know they are going to lose and have decided it doesn't matter. They see me emerge from the smoke. Weapons raise. Someone shouts a warning in Kithra, a language of resonant tones that my translator renders imperfectly, losing most of the harmonic meaning. So, who are you? What do you want? I don't answer. I don't have an answer that would help them. What follows is 20 seconds of close-quarters work that I am not going to describe in detail, because the detail doesn't serve anything except the part of me that was trained to be clinical about things that should not be clinical. 6 people who had already been fighting for an hour. Wounded. exhausted, trying to protect something they believed in. I step over them. I reach the door. And then something hits me from behind, not one of the settlement's guards, but one of the Dominion's creatures, a glancing strike from a limb that moves faster than I tracked, and the world tilts, and my legs stop working, and the rain is the last thing I see clearly before the darkness comes. The burning settlement. The rain. Always the rain. Then nothing. Pain wakes me. Not the sudden pain of an injury just received, but the deep, settled pain of damage that has had time to establish itself. The kind that tells you, before you even open your eyes, that something is seriously wrong and has been wrong for a while. I open my eyes. Gray sky. Endless. The particular shade of gray that belongs to overcast mornings on worlds with a cooler sun than Earth's. I'm lying on sand, dark sand, almost black, the kind formed from volcanic rock ground down over centuries. The sound of waves. The smell of salt and something faintly luminescent, like bioluminescence carried on the wind. For a moment I don't move. I run an inventory of my body the way CSOD training teaches you. Start at the extremities, work inward, identify what works and what doesn't before you try to use anything. Both hands, present, responsive, though the right one aches. Legs, present. That's the source of the deep pain. Something hit me hard enough to crack at least 2 ribs and damage the underlying tissue badly enough that I should not, by any reasonable assessment, be conscious. I push myself upright anyway. The pain flares white and then settles back to its established depth. That's when I see her. She's kneeling in the sand beside me, close enough that I should have sensed her before I opened my eyes, which tells me either my situational awareness is worse than I thought, or I was unconscious long enough that she had time to settle into stillness. Her hands are raised above my injured side, not touching, hovering 3 inches from the wound. They glow. Soft blue light, pulsing in a rhythm that I gradually recognize is synchronized with my heartbeat, which means it's been doing this long enough to synchronize, which means she has been kneeling here in the dark on this beach doing this for me while I was unconscious and completely vulnerable. Our eyes meet. She freezes. The glow flickers once, like a candle in a draft, and then she pulls back fast. A reflex, the kind that comes from sudden reawareness of context. She had been focused on the work. Now she remembers the situation. We stare at each other across 2 feet of dark sand. She is Kithra. I know the species from the briefing file and from the settlement, tall, slender, with a physiology that suggests a world with lower gravity than Earth standard. Her skin has a faint iridescent quality in certain light, the way oil moves on water. Her eyes are large and deep, structured differently from human eyes, capable of a wider spectrum of light perception. She is wearing what remains of formal clothing, something that was once layered and structural, now torn and burned at the edges. She looks exhausted in a way that goes past physical. The kind of exhaustion that comes from loss too large to fully process, held together by whatever the body does when the mind needs more time. And then, without any further warning, her eyes close and she collapses sideways onto the sand. I sit with this for a moment. She healed me. That's what happened. The blue light, the synchronized pulse. She used whatever the Kithra healing ability is, the thing the briefing described in 2 sentences as limited biokinetic field projection, range and effect unknown, and she used it on me. An enemy. The person who came to kill her and take the thing she carried. She healed me and then exhausted herself doing it and collapsed on a beach next to the person who was sent to end her life. I stand slowly. My left side protests with considerable feeling. I reach for the blade at my right hip, still there, the Dominion creatures didn't strip my weapons, and hold it in my hand. She is right there. 3 feet away. Unconscious. Defenseless. The mission parameters are clear. The mission is still active. Nothing that happened in the settlement officially changes the assignment. I raise the blade. The gray morning light runs along the carbon steel edge. I have made this calculation hundreds of times. The geometry of a single clean action, the end of something that needs to end. My body knows how to do this without my mind needing to participate. That's what 11 years of conditioning produces. Efficiency. Separation of function from feeling. Except, my arm doesn't move. I stand there with the blade raised and try to understand what's happening in my own body, and what I find is not hesitation in the way I understand hesitation, the weighing of alternatives, the calculation of risk. This is something else. Something that doesn't have a name in CSOD operational language because CSOD operational language was built specifically to not need this word. She healed me. She could have let me bleed out on this shore. The Dominion creatures were gone, or if they weren't, she had survived them without my help. She could have taken whatever options remained and left me dying in the sand. Instead, she knelt beside me and synchronized her healing ability to my heartbeat and spent whatever reserves she had keeping me alive. But the question sits in the middle of my operational thinking like a stone in a stream, redirecting everything that flows past it. I lower the blade. Slowly. The metal feels heavier than it did a moment ago, which is not a physical fact but is a true one. I step back from her. Then a few more steps until I have enough distance to think clearly, or at least to think without the immediate pressure of proximity to a decision I apparently cannot make right now. The island is small, I can see that from here. Dense vegetation inland, the kind of growth that suggests this world has generous rainfall and rich soil. The sea surrounds us in every direction. No structures visible. No signals on the emergency band of my wrist communicator, which still has power but no connection to anything. We are alone here. Both of us. Stranded on an island on a nameless world, the last survivors of whatever happened on that burning settlement, and I am standing in the rain holding a blade I cannot bring myself to use. For the first time in 11 years, I did not finish the mission. I don't know yet whether that makes me broken or fixed. Her name is Aelith. She tells me this on the second evening, sitting across the fire I built from driftwood and dried vegetation while she was still unconscious through the first night. She says it carefully, like she's testing whether I deserve to have it, and I understand that impulse. Names are a form of trust, and trust is a resource she has very little reason to extend to me. My name is Kale, I tell her. She repeats it once, quietly, with the slight harmonic undertone that Kithra add to sounds they are examining. Then she nods and looks back at the fire. That's the beginning of language between us. Everything else, for the first 2 days, is silence. But it is not an empty silence. It has texture to it, the kind that exists between people who are paying close attention to each other without wanting to admit it. I watch her heal herself that second night. The blue light returns, slower this time, less controlled. She is working with whatever reserves the healing of me left behind. She touches her own side, and I notice for the first time that she was wounded too. Not as badly as I was, but wounded. She healed me first. She spent what she had on me first, and left her own damage for after, and I don't know what to do with that information, so I look at the fire instead. She notices me noticing. She doesn't say anything. On the third day, I circle the island. It takes 40 minutes at walking pace. No freshwater sources on the eastern side, but I find a spring on the western slope, clean, cold, tasting faintly of minerals I don't have names for. I bring water back in the container from my field kit and set it beside her without comment. She drinks half of it and then looks at me with an expression I'm still learning to read. "Why are you doing this?" is what I think the expression means. I don't have an answer. Not yet. So I sit down across the fire and we exist together in silence for another several hours, and I notice that the faces that usually fill my mind when I'm still, the ones I stopped counting because the master said counting was weakness, don't come tonight. The silence in my head is different. Not empty, but different. On the fourth day she speaks. Not carefully this time. Not testing. Like she has run the calculation and decided. "You were dying when I found you," she says. Her Concord standard is accented with the harmonic undertones of Kithra's speech, which makes it sound less like language and more like music with meaning embedded in it. "The Dominion strike caught you from behind. You had maybe 2 hours." "I know," I say. "You don't ask why I helped you. I've been thinking about it for 4 days. I haven't come up with an answer that satisfies me, so I thought I'd wait and see if you'd tell me." She looks at the fire. Something in her expression shifts, not softening exactly, more like adjusting. Recalibrating. "You fought them," she says. "In the settlement. Before they hit you. I saw it from the window." The pause. You weren't fighting to take the core. You were fighting because they were killing people. I was fighting to get to you. I know. She meets my eyes. But the way you fought them was not the way someone fights to reach a target. It was the way someone fights because the killing around them is wrong and stopping it is the only available response. Another pause. I've seen a lot of soldiers. I know the difference. I don't answer that. I'm not sure she's right. I'm not sure she's wrong. The Concorde sent you, she says. It's not a question. Yes. And the Dominion. They got there first. They always do. She looks away toward the ocean. Humanity is new to this war. The Dominion has been fighting it for 300 years. They know where to strike before anyone else knows the strike is coming. 300 years, I say. What started it? She is quiet for a long moment. The fire crackles between us. The ocean moves beyond the tree line with the steady, indifferent sound of water that has been doing what it does for a very long time. My people found something, she says finally, in the deep systems, past the outer belt. Something that predates every current civilization in this galaxy, older than the Concorde, older than the Dominion, older than any species currently alive. We call it the first architecture. The Dominion calls it a weapon. They've been trying to control it, contain it, prevent anyone else from understanding what it is. She touches her chest, briefly, a gesture I've noticed before, like she's checking something. The core is not a weapon. It is a record. Everything my people found, everything we understood about what was built before us, it lives in the core. And the Dominion cannot allow that knowledge to exist freely. Because freely existing knowledge about the first architecture would demonstrate that the Dominion's entire claim to authority in this galaxy is built on a lie, she says simply. Yes. The fire pops. Sparks rise and die in the dark above us. The Concorde doesn't know that, I say. The Concorde knows enough to want the core. They don't know enough to understand what it actually is. She looks at me. You do now. I sit with that for a while. 11 years of missions for the Concorde. 17 assignments I didn't ask questions about because the master said questions were the first step toward failure, and failure on a CSOD mission meant people died. I followed orders because I trusted the framework, and I trusted the framework because I was 19 years old when the Dominion killed 40,000 people and the Concorde was the only structure offering to do something about it. What does it mean if the structure is incomplete? What does it mean if the thing you trusted was real but partial, not wrong exactly, but not the whole truth? You're thinking about your orders, she says. I'm thinking about a lot of things. The mission is still technically active. She says it without accusation. You know that. I know. She reaches into the fold of her torn garment and produces something. A small thing, smooth about the size of my closed fist, that catches the firelight in ways that don't quite make physical sense. It pulses once, faintly blue, and I feel it in my chest before I see it with my eyes. The core. She holds it out toward me on her open palm. Take it, she says. I stare at her. Take it. Complete your mission. Return to the Concorde. Her hand is steady. Her eyes are steady. She means it completely. If that is what ends this for you, if that is what your freedom costs, then take it. I won't stop you. The core sits in her palm and pulses, and I feel each pulse like a secondary heartbeat, and I think about 11 years and 40,000 dead and a discharge paper waiting for me on the other side of one decision, and I look at Aelith, at the exhaustion she's been carrying since the settlement burned, at the way she healed me first when she was wounded too, at the way she's offering me this without a single trace of manipulation or performance, and I understand something clearly. This is the actual mission. Not the 3-page briefing file. Not the extraction coordinates. This moment, right here, is the real thing I was sent across the galaxy to discover. I reach out and close her fingers around the core. No, I say. She looks at our joined hands for a moment. Then she looks at me. Neither of us says anything else for a long time. But when the rain starts again, soft and steady against the leaves above us, neither of us moves away from the fire. On the 5th day she tells me about the core properly. Not the political explanation. She gave me that by the fire. This is something else. Personal. The way you explain something when you've decided the person across from you deserves the full version. When my people first found the first architecture, Alith begins, and we're sitting on the western slope near the spring, the morning light coming through the canopy in pieces, we understood immediately that we were looking at something that changed everything. Not technology we could reverse engineer. Not power we could harness. Evidence. Proof that civilization in this galaxy is not what the Dominion has been telling everyone it is for 300 years. What has the Dominion been telling everyone? That there was no civilization before theirs. That the galaxy was empty and they filled it. That the hierarchy, the Dominion at the apex, every other species arranged beneath them in order of usefulness, is the natural order, the inevitable result of who was first and strongest. She pauses. The first architecture proves that there were civilizations here long before the Dominion. Civilizations they did not defeat. Civilizations that simply ended, for reasons we don't yet understand, leaving behind structures that demonstrate a level of understanding so far beyond current science that the Dominion's claim to being the galaxy's most advanced power becomes laughable. And the core carries the record of what your people found. Everything. Every scan, every analysis, every translation attempt, every theory. My people spent 40 years studying the first architecture before the Dominion found us. 40 years of accumulated understanding, encoded and crystallized into the core because we knew they were coming and we needed the record to survive even if we didn't. She touches her chest again. My mother made the core. My mother carried it for 20 years before me. Now I carry it. I think about that. The weight of it. Not physical weight. The weight of being the last person standing between a 40-year record and the people who want it destroyed. How many of your people are left? I ask. She is quiet for long enough that I know the answer before she gives it. I don't know, she says. When the Dominion attacked the settlement, I was in the lower level with the core. I felt the upper platforms fall. I felt, she stops. The harmonic undertone in her voice shifts into something that doesn't have a translation in Concord Standard, something that conveys grief in a register below language. I felt them go. Each one. The Kithra are not bonded the way some species are, but we are connected through the core's resonance. And I felt them go. I don't offer comfort. I don't have the right kind. What I offer instead is the thing I know how to give. I sit with her in silence and I don't look away and I don't minimize it by filling the space with words. After a while, she continues. There may be survivors. There were Kithra in the outer settlements, smaller communities, further from the main platform. The Dominion may not have found all of them. She looks at the ocean. I have to go back. Back to the settlement? Back to what's left of it. To search. To understand what remains. She meets my eyes. And if there are survivors, to give them what the core carries. Not to keep it locked in one person. To distribute it, scatter it, make it impossible for the Dominion to erase with a single strike. It's a good plan. Harder to execute than to describe. They'll be watching the settlement, I say. I know. The Dominion doesn't leave a target unmonitored after a first strike. I know that too. She looks at me. You know their operational patterns. I've been fighting them for 3 years. Then you know how they position a secondary watch. Yes. She waits. I run the calculation, the Dominion standard post-strike protocol, the likely position of any follow-up unit, the approach vectors that would avoid their sensor range. My mind does it automatically, the way trained minds do, producing the answer before I've consciously decided to look for it. The northern approach, I say. Come in from the seaside, below the sensor horizon. Time it for the transition between watch rotations, the Dominion runs 6-hour cycles, and there's a 4-minute gap at each transition while the handoff occurs. 4 minutes is enough. She nods slowly. There's one more thing, she says. About the core. Something in her voice shifts when she says it. Careful. The tone of someone delivering information they know will be difficult to receive. When I healed you on the shore, she says, I want to be precise about this. I was not planning what happened. But you were dying faster than my ability could manage alone, and the core responds to need in ways that sometimes exceed intention. I look at her. What did it do? It bonded with you. She says it plainly, without apology, but also without detachment. She understands the weight of what she's saying. The healing required a framework, a stable structure to work through. The core provided one. It has happened before with my people, but never a pause, never with a human. We don't know what that means exactly. We know the bond is real. We know it's not reversible. And we know that the Dominion's creatures can sense the core's resonance whether it's in me or... In me, I say. Yes. I sit with this. The pulse I've been feeling since I woke on the shore, the secondary heartbeat that I attributed to injury and adrenaline, is the core. It's been bonded to me since the first morning. Everything I've felt since then, the way the silence in my head changed, the way the faces from my missions receded, the way some new and nameless thing has been building in the space they left, has been happening alongside this bond, shaped by it, maybe caused by it. I should feel violated by this. I look for that feeling and I don't find it. What I find instead is something that has no CSOD designation, the sense of carrying something that matters. Not an assignment. Not a target. Something that matters because of what it is. They'll come for it, I say. They always do. Then we need to move before they locate the resonance. She stands, brushes dark sand from her clothing, looks at the ocean with the expression of someone who has been looking at horizons for a very long time and has learned to read what they say. There's a boat, she says, half buried in the vegetation on the northern slope. It was an evacuation vessel from the settlement, small, damaged, but it reaches the water. I found it the second night when you were sleeping. I look at her. She almost smiles. I wasn't going to leave without telling you. That's not what I was thinking. What were you thinking? That you had a way out and you stayed anyway. The almost smile becomes something more complete, brief and real, and carrying the weight of everything the last 5 days have been. I had reasons to stay, she says simply. We gather what little we have. The field kit, the water container, the blades. We don't talk about what we're leaving behind. We both know. As we push the damaged boat into the cold water of the western cove, I feel the core pulse once, strong, clear, deliberate. Like punctuation. Like the end of one sentence and the beginning of another. Whatever I was before this island, I am not that anymore. I don't yet know what I am instead. But for the first time in 11 years, the not knowing doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like the beginning of something I chose. The sea is the wrong kind of calm. I've learned to read weather on a dozen worlds, and calm like this, the specific stillness that feels like held breath rather than peace, means something is coming. The water is too flat. The light on it too even. The horizon too clean. This world's ocean is pretending nothing is wrong, and the pretense is just slightly too careful to believe. Aelith sits at the bow, watching the horizon. I stay amidships, balancing the weight, keeping the damaged hull centered in the water. The boat is old, pre-settlement, probably the kind of vessel that was already a backup option before it spent years buried in vegetation on an island nobody was supposed to visit. It leaks in 2 places near the stern. Slowly, manageably, in the way that things sometimes hold together past the point where they should have failed because they're needed. I know something about that. 3 hours out from the island, the water changes. Not the surface, underneath. A shift in color, from the dark blue-green of open ocean to something darker, more opaque, as if the depth beneath us has changed character. Aelith feels it the same moment I see it. Her posture tightens. Not fear, something more operational than fear. Recognition. The Dominion's trackers, she says, without turning. They found the core's resonance. How close? Close enough to have sensed something ahead. The core pulses inside my chest. Once, hard, like a heartbeat trying to warn the body it inhabits. The water around the boat ripples outward from the hull in a pattern that has nothing to do with our movement, concentric circles spreading from us like we're the source of something, which I suppose we are. Can you suppress the resonance? I ask. Not without disrupting the bond. And disrupting the bond now could. She stops. It would be bad. I file that. How many? I can feel 2. Maybe 3. They're large. She finally turns to look at me. Dominion warforms. They don't use standard creatures for retrieval operations. These are engineered specifically for this. I've encountered Dominion warforms twice before in field operations. Once on Mira Station, once in the undersea networks of the Beleth system. They are not animals in any meaningful sense. They are weapons that happen to be biological. Designed for specific functions, stripped of everything that doesn't serve those functions, capable of operating in environments that would kill most species. In open water, they will be in their preferred environment. The first one surfaces 50 meters off the port side. It is large, longer than the boat, darker than the water, moving with the deceptive slowness of something that doesn't need to hurry because it has already decided the outcome. It circles us once, at distance, and I watch its movement pattern. It's not attacking. It's assessing. Mapping our speed, our direction, our defensive options. These things are smart. That's what makes them dangerous. There are more underneath, I say. Yes. The second one surfaces on the starboard side. Then the third, 30 meters ahead, directly in our path. Not blocking us, just establishing position. A triangulation. They are coordinating. The core surges inside my chest like a second heart catching up after missing beats. The sensation is intense enough that I press my hand against my sternum involuntarily, and the water around the boat ripples again, harder this time, and all 3 warforms react simultaneously. They feel it, the resonance, and it pulls them closer the way a current pulls. Aelith stands in the bow, steadies herself against the boat's rocking. Her hands begin to glow, the blue light stronger than I've seen it, stronger than on the island, stronger than the healing light. Something different. Something she's building rather than spending. What are you doing? I ask. What I should have done 300 years ago, she says, which is not an answer but has the feeling of one. The warform ahead of us submerges. That's when they attack. When they go under, you lose track of them, and then they come up beneath you. I know this from the Beleth system. I know it and I can't stop it. The hull impact is massive. The boat lifts partway out of the water and comes down wrong, and both of us are thrown. I catch the gunwale with one hand and hold, and Aelith somehow keeps her feet, which tells me the Kithra have better equilibrium than the briefing file suggested. The boat settles back, taking on water faster now. The 2 stern leaks have become one connected breach. The warform surfaces alongside us, close enough that I can see its structure clearly for the first time. Dark-plated, multi-limbed in the water, differently configured than what I saw in the Beleth operation. This variant is aquatic primary, built for exactly this environment. Its eyes, if they are eyes, if that's the right word for the sensory organs on its anterior surface, fix on my chest. On the core. Not on Aelith. On me. I bring a blade up as it lunges and the impact nearly takes me over the side, but I brace against the hull and push back, and the molecular edge opens a line across the plate armor that would have been impossible 6 days ago. The core is doing something to me. I feel it clearly now, the way energy moves through my body differently, faster, more completely than it should. I am stronger than I was. Faster than I was. Not superhuman. More like human at a level I've never been able to access before, the way extreme circumstances sometimes unlock capacities that normal conditions keep gated. The warform recoils. It didn't expect that. The one from the starboard side is already moving in. Kale. Aelith's voice is calm. Dangerously calm. The blue light around her hands is now bright enough to illuminate the water around the boat. The core, stop holding it back. I'm not. You are. You've been containing it since you woke up. Every time it surges you suppress it. I can feel you doing it. I process this in the 2 seconds before the second warform reaches the hull. She's right. The surges I've been feeling, the ones I've been managing, regulating, treating like a symptom to control, I've been suppressing them the way CSOD training suppresses every response that isn't operationally sanctioned. Contain, control, direct. Don't let anything move through you that you haven't authorized. The second warform hits the hull on the starboard side. The boat lifts hard. Water comes over the gunwale. I stop suppressing it. The core responds immediately. Not gradually, immediately, the way something responds when it's been waiting. Energy floods outward from my chest in all directions simultaneously, and the water around the boat erupts in concentric rings of blue-white light, and all three warforms react the same way. They pull back. Not flee. Pull back, the way things pull back from a stimulus they haven't encountered before and need to reassess. They reassess for approximately 4 seconds. Then the third one comes up from beneath, directly under the boat, and the hull splits. We're in the water. Cold. The kind of cold that takes the breath from you in the first second and then demands a decision, panic or function. 11 years of CSOD training produces a reflex answer. Function. I surface. Find Aelith immediately. She's 3 meters away, treading water, the blue light from her hands now spreading across the surface around her in patterns that are keeping the warforms at the edge of range. But she can't maintain it and swim at the same time, and the shore is still a kilometer out. We make a decision without speaking it. She maintains the field. I swim toward her, get an arm around her, and we move toward shore together with me providing the locomotion and her providing the barrier. It is not a fast process. The warforms circle. They test the edge of Aelith's field twice and pull back both times. They are patient in the way that things are patient when they believe time is on their side. Halfway to shore, the field begins to flicker. I can't, Aelith starts. I know, I say. Don't. What do you? Trust me. She does. She lets the field go, and both of us go under briefly, and I feel all three warforms orient toward us simultaneously, and I release the core completely, no suppression, no containment, no CSOD management protocols, and let it do what it wants to do. What it wants to do, apparently, is speak. Not in language. In resonance. The core broadcasts outward through the water in a frequency that I feel in my bones before I hear it in any other way, and the warforms stop. All three of them. Still in the water around us, not attacking, not retreating. Waiting. The core pulses 3 times in a pattern I don't consciously produce. The warforms respond, not to me. To the core. To whatever it's saying in that frequency. To whatever the first architecture left encoded in Kithra crystal 40 years ago when a people saw what was coming and tried to preserve what mattered. One by one, the warforms turn away. They submerge. They don't come back. Aelith and I reach shore on our own momentum, wash up on the black sand of the settlement coast, and lie there breathing for a while. What just happened? I asked the sky. The core spoke to them, she says. She sounds as surprised as I am. In the original encoding, before the Dominion modified their behavior, warforms were something else. Something made from something older. The pause. The core reminded them. I think about the first architecture. About what was here before the Dominion and their claims and their wars and their 300 years of controlled history. How much does the core know? I ask. Everything my people found, she says. And possibly more. Possibly things my people found and didn't realize they found. We lie on the shore in silence for a while. Then I stand up, reach a hand down to Aelith, and we walk toward the ruins of what was once her city. The settlement is quieter than burning things usually are after they've finished burning. Most destruction leaves a kind of residual energy, structural instability, lingering heat, the specific unsettledness of spaces that have been violated. The remains of Aelith's settlement have something different. A stillness that feels less like aftermath and more like completion. Like something that has said everything it had to say and is now finished. The floating platforms are half submerged, the ones that remain. The upper structures are gone entirely. The fire and the Dominion's initial strike took them. What's left is the lower level, fractured and tilted, the metal framework of buildings jutting upward from black water at angles that suggest the platforms shifted before they stopped. Rope bridges hang between them like broken sentences. And beneath everything, in the water, on the fractured walkways, against the tilted walls of structures that used to mean something, the dead. I am not going to describe what the dead look like after a Dominion strike. I've seen it before. It doesn't become something you look at neutrally. What I will say is that there were many of them, and some were very small, and Aelith walks past all of it with her eyes forward, not because she doesn't feel it but because feeling it completely right now would end her, and she has something to do first. We reach the center platform. The place that was sacred. I can tell from the architecture, the specific intentionality of the design even in its current fractured state. Whatever ceremonies were performed here, whatever the Kithra brought to this space, it held meaning that survived the burning in the shape of the stones even if it survived in nothing else. Aelith kneels. She presses her palms flat against the stone and closes her eyes. The core in my chest responds instantly. A pulse, and then a sustained resonance, as if it recognizes where it is and what is being asked of it. The blue light spreads from Aelith's hands into the stone, follows the fracture lines, spreads across the platform in branching patterns like frost on glass. And then, slowly, one by one, they appear. Not physically. The right word might be presences, points of light that gather above the stone, that cluster toward Aelith's hands, that are clearly oriented around her and around me and around the core. Her people. Not their bodies. Those are in the water and on the walkways and against the walls. Something else. Something that remained after the bodies stopped. This isn't mine to be at the center of. But I can't leave and I can't look away, so I stand at the edge of the platform and watch the presences gather and feel the core pulsing in time with each new arrival, and I understand, without Aelith explaining it, without any briefing file or operational context, that what I'm witnessing is a people taking attendance after a disaster. Counting who remains. The specific grief of a community discovering the shape of its own absence. Aelith is crying. Without sound, tears falling onto stone that doesn't reflect them, lost in the wet surface of a platform that has seen too much water today. She doesn't wipe them away. She stays with her hands on the stone and her eyes closed and the presences gathered around her in the morning light, and I stay at the edge of the platform and give her whatever this is. The core surges. Not gradually. A single hard pulse, the kind that would have knocked me sideways 6 days ago. Now I absorb it and feel it move through me and out into the stone beneath my feet, and the presences respond. They orient toward me, toward the core inside me, and something moves in the space between them and me that I don't have language for yet. Recognition. That's the closest word in any language I speak. The presences recognize the core. And through the core, they recognize something about me. Not me specifically, not Cale Morrow of Portland, Oregon, but something the core has been doing to me for 5 days that I only partially understand. Making room, maybe, for more than one thing to live in the same body. They know you, Aelith says quietly. She hasn't opened her eyes. They can feel the bond. She stops. The harmonic undertone in her voice shifts into something I've never heard her produce before. Wonder maybe. They're glad. Glad, I repeat, that it didn't end here, that the core survived. She pauses, that it found someone to carry it who would use it correctly. I don't know if that's what I am. I don't know if I'm capable of using anything correctly yet. I've spent 11 years using things in specifically the wrong direction. But the presences are gathered around me and the core is resonating and the morning light is coming through the fractured platform in pieces, and I make a decision. Tell them, I say, that I'm going to do something with what they gave 40 years to understand. I don't know exactly what yet, but it won't be what the Dominion wanted it to be. And it won't be what the Concord sent me here to do with it. I look at Aelith. I'm not a custodian of this. I'm not qualified to be. But I can be a carrier, she says, until we find somewhere safe enough to distribute it. Yes. She nods. Opens her eyes. The presences, all of them, however many remain of her people's dead, pulse once in unison and then disperse, slowly, in the way light disperses when a source is moved away rather than extinguished. Still there, somewhat. Just further. The sky darkens. Not like weather. The Dominion's secondary unit has found us. The second strike doesn't come from above. It comes from the water. 3 vessels surface simultaneously from beneath the platform. Not ships in any conventional sense, more like mobile weapons platforms, dark and low profile and completely silent until the moment they aren't. They have been here, waiting beneath the settlement, since before we arrived. This was not an ambush. This was a planned conclusion to an operation that began the moment the Dominion's first unit hit the settlement. They assumed the core would return to the ruins. They were right. The platform shakes as the first impact hits the underside. Then the second. Then all three firing at once, and the platform is breaking under us, fractured stone separating further, the water rising through the cracks. The entities that emerge from the vessels are different from the warforms in the water. These are operator-class Dominion soldiers, beings, not machines, wearing full environmental armor and carrying weapons designed for close-quarters engagement in compromised structural environments. They know exactly where they are and exactly what they came for. There are 12 of them. I move before I think, which is when I move best, and the first two don't account for the core-enhanced speed, and I'm through them before they fully register the engagement. The molecular blades do what they were designed to do against standard armor, which Dominion operator suits are not, but close enough for the first 30 seconds. Aelith is not behind me. She's beside me. Her hands are blazing, not the healing blue, not the resonance blue, something brighter and harder, like the difference between a candle and a torch. She sends it outward in controlled bursts, not attacking but disrupting. The Dominion's weapons system rely on targeting arrays that the core's resonance scrambles when she projects it at sufficient intensity. They can't get a clean lock. What they can do is overwhelm by numbers, and 12 to 2 is overwhelming regardless of what the core is doing to my reaction time. We fall back to the central stone. The sacred geometry of it, the specific arrangement of the remaining structure, gives us angles, gives us a position where they can only approach from 3 directions instead of 12. I hold the primary approach. Aelith covers the secondary. The tertiary we leave open and handle when it becomes necessary. It becomes necessary 4 times in 6 minutes. I take 2 hits. Real ones, operator-class weapons that the core manages to reduce but not eliminate. My left arm stops working properly after the second one. I switch the blade to my right hand and keep moving, because stopping is not available. The core is fully awake now. Every heartbeat is a detonation. The ground cracks beneath my feet when I move wrong. The water coming through the platform fractures rises and falls in response to the resonance pulses without any physical cause I can explain. The ruins are becoming the battle, and the battle is becoming the ruins, and everything is degrading together toward a point I can feel approaching. An endpoint. A threshold. One of the Dominion soldiers breaks through to Aelith from the tertiary approach. I feel it happen before I see it, the core responding to her sudden spike of alarm, and I'm across the platform in the time it takes to stop thinking about the distance, and the impact I make removing that soldier from the engagement is something I'm not going to be precise about. I stand between Aelith and the remaining operators. 8 of them. Still functioning. Still coordinated. They stop when I stop, because I've just demonstrated something about my response time that requires them to update their tactical assessment. The core builds inside me. Not gradually, I can feel the threshold approaching, the place where what I've been containing reaches the limit of containment. Kale, Aelith says from behind me. I know. You need to. I know. The 8 operators raise their weapons simultaneously. Coordinated. Disciplined. Not afraid. Dominion operators don't have fear in the operational sense, the same way I was trained not to have it. We have that in common, me and the things I'm facing. We were all made by organizations that considered fear a design flaw to be engineered out. The difference is that somewhere on an island with black sand and a fire between us, I started becoming something those organizations didn't design. I stopped suppressing the core entirely. Not to attack. Not to defend. I let it do what it has been trying to do since the bond formed, what it was designed to do 40 years ago by a people who understood something about the first architecture that the Dominion has spent 3 centuries trying to prevent anyone else from knowing. The core speaks. Not in resonance this time. In something that precedes resonance. Something that operates at the level where physics and biology and consciousness stop being separate categories. It doesn't broadcast outward. It broadcasts through. Through the stone, through the water, through the Dominion operators' armor and bodies and the conditioning that made them what they are. It doesn't tell them to stop. It shows them what they're fighting to suppress. 8 operators. 8 beings who were made by the Dominion the same way I was made by the Concord. Not asked, not given a choice, shaped by an institution with an agenda and trained to serve it without question. The core shows them 40 years of Kithra research. The first architecture. What the galaxy looked like before the Dominion's history began. What is possible when the thing controlling everyone's understanding of the possible is removed? 6 of the 8 lower their weapons. Not because of anything I did. Not because of Aelitha's light or my blades or the core's power in the combat sense. Because they were shown something and it was true and they recognized it as true, and some part of them, the part that existed before the conditioning, the part that every made thing retains however deeply it's buried, could not continue after seeing it. The remaining 2 engage. I stop them. Not lethally if I can help it, though the state of my left arm means my options are limited. When it's over, the platform is in pieces and the water is rising through all of it, and the Dominion's vessels are dark and the ruins are finally quiet in a way that feels different from before. Not pretending to be peaceful. Actually finished. Silence, when it comes after something like that, doesn't feel like peace. It feels earned. Like quiet that had to be paid for. The ruins settle. The water rises to its new level and stops. The fractured stone finds what equilibrium remains available to it. The morning light, it's still morning, somehow, all of that happened in less time than it felt like, comes through what's left of the platform in pieces and lies on the wet stone in shapes that have no pattern and need none. I sit in it. My left arm is not going to be functional without proper medical attention, which is not available on YR7 and won't be until we find a way off this world. It will heal. Human bodies heal from remarkable things. I've been proving that for 11 years. The arm will join the list of things that hurt now and won't later, a list that has been accumulating since I was 20 years old and keeps growing. The core is quiet. Not gone. The secondary heartbeat is still there, steady and deep, like it has settled into me properly now instead of occupying temporary space. Like it belongs here the same way lungs belong here. Part of the system. I look at my hands. At the blade in my right hand, the one I've been carrying for 11 years, the one I named without meaning to because names happen to things you live with long enough. I set it down on the stone beside me. Aelith comes and sits near me. Not across from me, near me. The distinction matters, I think, though I can't fully explain why. For a while neither of us speaks. We've developed a fluency in this kind of silence over the last 8 days. The ability to be in the same space and process separately while remaining in contact. It's a different skill than talking. Harder, in some ways. You stopped them, she says eventually. The core stopped them. You stopped suppressing the core. She looks at me. That's not a small thing for someone trained the way you were. She's right. It's not a small thing. 11 years of conditioning doesn't disappear because you decide it should. It has to be undone piece by piece, consciously, against the weight of everything that installed it. Letting the core speak through me required undoing 11 years of contain, control, direct in a single moment in the middle of a battle. I'm not certain how I did that. I'm not certain I could do it again, deliberately. Maybe that's the next 11 years. Learning to do deliberately what I did by necessity on a fractured platform on a nameless world. 2 of them didn't stop, I say. 2 of 12. She's quiet for a moment. The Dominion's conditioning is more thorough for some than others. Longer, more complete. The pause. But 6 saw it and put their weapons down. Yeah. That's not nothing, Kale. No, I agree. It's not nothing. The water moves below the platform. The gentle movement of a sea that has finished with its violence for today and returned to its older, longer business of being an ocean. I look at the ruins. At what remains of Aelitha's people's city, the fractured bones of a civilization that was building something important and was interrupted before it could finish. The records and the research and the 40 years of understanding that survived in the core because someone had the foresight to put it somewhere that could survive. What are the survivors going to need? I ask. She considers this. To know the core is intact. To understand that the record survives. She touches her chest, the old gesture, checking something, and then redirects it toward mine. It's in you now. They'll need to know that. Will they accept that? A human carrying the core. I accepted it, she says simply. That sits in the air between us for a moment. I need to contact the Concord, I say. Not to report the mission. To tell them what I know now. The core, the first architecture, what the Dominion has been suppressing. The Concord has been operating on incomplete information for years. They deserve the complete picture. And when you do? I don't know what they'll do with it. I'm honest about that. They might do the right thing. They might do the political thing. I can't control which one. The pause. But they need to know. And the mission? The mission is finished, I say. Not the way Command intended, but finished. She nods slowly. The kind of nod that is acceptance and something additional. Approval, maybe, or something quieter than approval but more durable. I pick up the blade again. Not because I need it right now. Because it's mine, and the things that are yours don't stop being yours because your relationship to them changes. I'll carry it differently from now on. I'll use it differently if I use it at all. But I'll carry it. The outer settlements, I say. We need to start there. Find whoever survived. Let them know the record is intact. I know where 3 of them are. Accessible if we can find transport. I can get us transport. The Concord has a relay station 3 systems over. I have access codes that still work, probably. We can requisition a shuttle and be gone before Command processes the mission delinquency report. She almost laughs. Not quite. She's not ready for laughter yet, and that's correct. Because there's a city of the dead behind us and she needs to carry that properly before anything lighter can coexist with it. But almost. You're very practical, she says. CSO does that to you, I say. Even when you're walking away from it, you still know how to work the systems. Is that what you're doing? Walking away from it. I look at the horizon. At the sea that tried to kill us this morning and couldn't. At the sky that brought Dominion weapons and held 12 soldiers and then held quiet. At a world that has no name in Concord records and has been witnessing things today that will change those records permanently once they're properly transmitted. I'm not walking away from anything, I say. I'm walking toward something I couldn't see before. I stand, carefully, favoring the left arm. There's a difference. Aelith stands beside me. Not behind me, beside me. The same position she's taken in every crisis since the night by the fire when she stopped letting me define the spatial relationship between us. You're not what they made you, she says. I almost say I know. But that's not quite right. I'm exactly what they made me, I say. The training, the conditioning, the 11 years, I can't separate that from what I am. It's in me the same way the core is in me now. Part of the system. I look at the ruins. But systems can be used for things their designers didn't intend. I've been demonstrating that since I woke up on the shore. She looks at me for a long moment. Studying. The way she studied me across the fire for 3 days before she told me her name. Then she nods. We turn away from the ruins together. Not because we're leaving them behind. We're not. We're carrying them with us, the way you carry the things that happened, the things that cost something, the things that changed the shape of everything after them. The ruins stay in us even as we walk away from them. That's what ruins are for. The core pulses once, soft and slow. The second heartbeat, keeping time. We walk toward the outer shore where I know from the briefing file, and the briefing file, for all its incompleteness, had accurate geography. There is a communications array left from an old Concord survey mission. Still functional, possibly. Probably, if nothing's hit it recently. I have access codes. I have a story to tell that is going to complicate a lot of things for a lot of powerful organizations who would prefer things not to be complicated. I have a dead mission on my record and a living bond in my chest and 11 years of CSOD training that turns out to be more useful for the things I'm now choosing to do than for the things I was sent to do. I have a name and a world and a person walking beside me who has a name and a world and has chosen, with full information and clear eyes, to keep walking in the same direction. The ocean behind us reflects a sky that finally looks like what morning is supposed to look like, not the gray of aftermath, not the overcast of something pretending, but the genuine pale light of a day beginning that has no category for what came before it. No rain. For the first time since the started, no rain. We walk.